me that you don't complain and you don't finger point. You just go out and work hard and try to find how, if there is an opportunity to collaborate and where you can do it. And I want to give a quick example. When I was in the Montana legislature, I was able to pass an insurance reform that helped parents of children with autism make sure that they got the coverage that they were paying for. This wasn't a giveaway. And I was able to bring together folks in the Senate and in the House, and mandates can be very controversial because I was able to work with them. We did some collaborating and compromising, and it's really that experience, that practical experience and that attitude that there is an opportunity to find out. You start from the middle. And what I'm concerned about, not only the gridlock, but sort of the extremism that we see in Congress due to ideological viewpoints, I will break through that with my common sense approach. And I think Montanans have so much common sense that we need to take it to Washington, and we'll convince people to work together.
Where's an area or an issue that Congress is dealing with right now where you feel like you could compromise, you could give up a little to reach some kind of a solution?
But two areas, actually. Taxation, with regard to, I think Mr. Daines mentioned the special interest taxation. I've served on taxation in the legislature. That's an area where I have in the past compromised. In fact, I've stood up to my own party to say, no, this will hurt small businesses. So looking at closing the Swiss cheese of federal corporate tax loopholes is an area, and looking at some of the other tax provisions that we have. The other area is the budget. When I was in the legislature, I was part of sustainable budgets and recognized you cannot live within your means, but you have to invest in the things that will help get people back to work and grow the economy. So those are two areas, and I think that I can offer some very practical advice on how we can not only compromise, but in those two areas of the economy and taxation.
Mr. Daines, would you like to expand upon specific areas where you could compromise?
Well, I think we talked about that.
In addition to the one.
Certainly, I think that's an important one. I think it's important that we get Congress and Washington to focus on the biggest issues. So often in political campaigns and debates, we talk on things that are frankly, the marginal edges get lost in the rounding. And I think the tax code is one of them that we need to go in and address it. It's broken. And by simplifying it and adding certainty to it, I think that will be key. And I think you're going to see bipartisan support for that when you see the members come back in January.
Okay, thank you.
Chaos has yet again erupted across the Middle East and North Africa, and this after President Obama's attempts to make a fresh start with that part of the world when he first took office. Does this represent a failed foreign policy on behalf of the Obama administration? And if you could, please provide a brief outline of your vision of a successful foreign policy. And we begin, Ms. Gillen, with you.
Thank you. One of my concerns in foreign policy, actually one of my top goals, is to make sure that we keep America and Americans safe. And that means making sure that our borders are protected, that we have foreign policy that can't exclusively rely upon military action, but where diplomacy plays a large role. And I share that because I don't think in one particular incident, when you're dealing with countries of different cultures, that you could say that there has been a failure in foreign policy. I just think it shows the challenging world in which we are dealing right now. I think one of the benefits of the United States is that we have been working with folks, sharing our technology, sharing our vision of democracy. That has to be weighed against our concern for our own national safety. And as we know, as we even know we can compare it possibly to the U.S. House, where people, Republicans and Democrats, have a hard time working together. Maybe it's that on a much broader scale in the foreign policy. But I think we need a steady hand and a continuing concern for security of Americans.
Mr. Daines.
The last couple of weeks have been reminders, as tragic as they have been, around the complexities, the challenges we face in the Middle East. Over the years, I've had a chance to visit Israel. I've spent time in Egypt, and I don't consider myself to be an expert on those countries, but I've spent enough time there to recognize that we are dealing with very complex problems that date back thousands of years. I think what's key to restoring stability in that region. Number one is ensuring you have open lines of communication. And if there's been a failed part of President Obama's policy, it's the fact he was not willing to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel here just in the last couple of weeks, at a time when we see the rise of violence going on in the Middle East. And I think it's important that we stand, and we know who our allies are in the Middle East, and that we continue to stand and support Israel. And I would argue that's I don't know if I'm going to call it a failing of the policy, just a great concern I have here as somebody who has spent time in the region and cares deeply that we have a stable Middle East.
Mr. Kaiser?
I think President Obama has failed in his soft approach. Also, this automatic renewal of aid to all these foreign countries should be something discussed every single year. Afghanistan, we should come home. We have now individuals killing our soldiers, but it's hard to communicate with a group when it's just a one-way conversation, and their corrupt governments are convincing their people that we're evil, that we're putting these dictators in place, and it's the dictators that are strangling the people without any help whatsoever. They're keeping all the money. So I would have the aid be done on an annual basis.
How would you base that decision, renewal of aid? What criteria would have to be met?
That would be. That's a good question. But that's something that would be discussed in the House, in the Senate.
Would you like to see us pull out of Afghanistan, Iraq, just kind of clear the boards, the planks?
It's time to bring the troops home.
Really? Well, where does that leave the Afghanis then? In the hands of the Taliban, and we're all...
Well, there's plans to transition the troops home, but the role of the U.S. military is to win wars. I don't believe the role of the U.S. military is to nation build. And the military needs to go in, get the job done, and then come home.
Ms. Gillen, your thoughts on that?
I agree that we need to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And I think that, and from my understanding is that it isn't just the military facet. We are involved in a transition plan. Actually, there's a woman from the Billings area that's involved in community development over there. What really concerns me most of all is that when our troops come home from Afghanistan, we need to make sure that they get the services that they need, that they can be trained, they can have an opportunity to go and have education, and also this whole issue of PTSD. So I'm very concerned that some are suggesting that we make cuts in defense that could hurt the folks that served ours. Folks who serve for us when they come home, they shouldn't have